jeex which in chasati the katuhan gunchish hayuqatangish to iltu yewa which in aya yagachtudlaq qasakhan qatilla antin kahwan ish aya khan kawadnik yakakyewe achtla ach in yukanik just tillaan qaqasakhan eteich tu yena Gwash, ja, dat tlelchas ach edachaya ach tuasagu. Do you katangiaya ya achi akaka kwashi. Ja, du
Heil iach Tlingit ani qa nik ten da yi qa qanik ten qita I neq just tulla an qaqsakhan qiteq tuyen u ya nalqotli Tlingit ani akagede guxlaqwat akukek qati iqusti Keixwnéi trikadek qagud adjawaj as qsakhan qatullaan iteq tuyena u jawase ookéet'ch yaan itulliani qu qal iida haskuqtashi
Eqa, yuqatank awa. Do inye Keixwnéi qashakshani. Ye awa tlakawe hasi eqa khatullatish. Asach tuasagu hasi khande khagudi. Qahasqaqawusi. Ach ide has gugwatéeyi yesu. Ye awa adatu tuchtatan. Ach ide haskuchtashi ye awa wedua. Yek eqoa yank wuchin ye jagachtune yuhan. Yatayach qasakhan qatilla antin. Yewa ach tuasagu a deiliach yati. Jaguksa aya Tlingit tutultu. Gwash ach a keixwnéi we yuqatank aya atchilla jeex. Kan qagid. Tlelli yuqatangi qa adai yakqas Tis ach tuasagu yisachwa achi. Ye awa hasaqa achit awe kagachtu ya hadajchan kisani. Hatuasagu aya hasu has ausaku. Adeyu qadil atkiye. Hajagu qaku yach. Ya yidati Tlingit awa. Keixwnéi hayuqatangitin. Ajawe Keixwnéi hutsuye awaqa. Kedin yududzene Tlingit yuqatangitin. Gwash hutsu do yuqatangi aya ach tuasagu watua achi. Aqa awe yiqaqwus. Dasach atawus Ya du Huqadukhukh. Huayinak.
Sa Tlingit xete. Tatuasagu Tlingit awishkuko. Ka awadu hastu idekaxitashi. Ye awa akhtu chiate. Akhtu yake ye hon atayandik yek qanaqay.
Jeex.
to collect my thoughts.
Aw.
Go ahead, Juan.
Oh. Hajinakatak kanaltsia kawayati. Where you think it you katangi.
Wasa.
Stakad at koa atat utasiku akoa ohan. Ajawa you hunch. Atayandik kakinaki. Has the khode you kaki at. Has to in Keixwnéi. Ja, Tlingit juqatanka ja achtia kaka juqatanka usikua. Has to khankiku diketlwasa utiyu has kanayus. Has to in Keixwnéi kwasa koinuku. Sometimes so jeet ookéet'ch, you know, it's kind of hard to do. Our gugwatéeyi sometimes jeex. Then you do Tlingit Tlingit Ajawa in Keixwnéi has to Keixwnéi at Kakisaku Gudakasa Tlingit Yuqatanga Usiku as to Jide Yuqatanga a corporation to na Kakisaku. Si Hanaya Adayan de Kachinak Telchakotka Johan Jaya Akagayis Ye Udutlitu Ajaya Akatukhatan Ye Konachi Katukhatan Eden gugwatéeyi Aya Kugwatéeyi.
How? Wasa yitu wuch koa achtuasagu wuchin yuqatil atki. Tlingit qinach tlél qinach shukwa Tlingit qinach kakachtu qaqawi tlél helwasa gugwatéeyi helwasa gugwatéeyi da tlakatyohan just kanai
Ach tu jak Keixwnéi du sacha achi. Just chatsu yewe ach tundatani. Just tulla an kakasachantin yagach bak. Yewe ach tu jak ka ade uch in Tlingit juqatangi stu wutuol. Tu ach tu jak yayi dat ganalchis.
Yuk Ewa chatsu dati tuchtatan. Ya nalkwatla ya Tlingit ani. Chua ya we datiachsa qinuk. Kuchita yachiti qai. Itatach aya kakikuk. Ya nalkwatsa. Kuchte koa. Kuchte kuchtakwatl. Aqat adasa aya Tlingit anika. Ijiwanak. Ikadetsu ye gugwatéeyi. Ajowe adati tuchtatan. Ya wasa. Ya kushiach adusach satiya yiin. Yuqiyatani. Tatlaan qara atyaw ne has to jeex gachiti. Aqa awe we yak at gwash ejide gugwatéeyi. Ye awe hashuka has adatu has kausha atkil data tinach sahayati ichachet hatawasaku hadayeyi kayik at helchus llanalchi at koa hatawasaku nak hajiyeti ka just yaki at ya ka jakti hutsuye ha Keixwnéi se wuk ya yaki at Tlingit an ka kutsati at ka akach awe haswusanechi at ye awe adati tuchtatanya yaki ajach tuasagu achi Tlingit ya shuku ya khana and chish.
Keixwnéi at het they call Keixwnéi. I must. We work, all of us working together on this.
Which part?
Oh, I just had it in my head and it just fluttered out.
Yeah, wuchin ye jagachtune qisakhan qatilla team. So we're all going to work together with love and kindness. And so I think about like all this stuff all the time because like sometimes Tlingit we're hard people sometimes, but when you look at the ways that we were taught, like they do talk a lot about love and kindness and respect and just really trying to go back to those as some core values. I was talking with another group today and you know, your values are more than a refrigerator magnet. They have to be these things that you sort of live by. To live well, right? And so I don't know, as every now and then I just want to start class just speaking Tlingit, listening to it, and just sort of, because sometimes it's good to do all the lessons, but every now and then, like we got to stop chopping it up and doing little, it's like you got all these little bits of food and you just got to put them together and make a meal every now and then. But I know that sometimes it could feel like it could get overwhelming, but the more we do this, the easier it kind of gets. And so what I encourage you all to do is when we do that, which will usually be at the beginning of classes, and the goal is to just do that a little bit more, and sometimes with some prompts like, okay, let's, what if Thursday's class, we start by talking about the weather and what kinds of things you need to wear. Just like, you know, just like kind of more general day-to-day stuff, but then every now and then, like these are pretty big concepts that we were listening to and kind of talking about like how to live your life and how to study and how to go ask the people who know the language and stuff like that. Yeah, any other thoughts that you folks are having or questions?
I think it was Keixwnéi at.
Oh,
I was thinking of.
The thing that helped them survive, or the thing that saved them, the thing that healed them. So that's what Walter Soboleff would talk about, is he would say, don't forget it. This wonderful thing. This thing that was born on the world. And it's this thing that saved them. Because he's talk about that. He's like, there was a reason our ancestors survived. And it's all coded in the language. And so as he was really advocating for more people to use it and speak it and learn it, that was one of his big reasons, was like this healing aspect and getting back to being a bit more whole, you know, as far as like being an entire person. So
I don't know if anybody ever gets stuck like this when we speak in the beginning. I have part of what I want to say, but I don't know the word rarely. And you know, I hear you guys speaking and you sound great, and I didn't want to, and I did eventually, but jump in and add some English.
it's better to have Tlingit with some English than English with some Tlingit. So I'll take it. And yeah, and just, you know, whenever we do this stuff, click that unmute button and start speaking and see what happens. Because the thing that I find with the more we teach, the more folks learn. Once you're like, okay, let's all speak, all of a sudden it's just ghost town, right? Population 1. And so, but just to sort of, we'll just sort of laugh at that, and we'll just deal with that, and we'll talk about that, and what's going to help. And so, like, I know it can be scary sometimes to just speak this language, but that's the whole goal. And so, but let me say this, like, we are not in the business of perfection, not at all. I got nothing. Perfection is a colonial mechanism. And so when people try to get people to be perfect, I think it's also, I just seen some weird stuff over the course of my life living with this language, where sometimes you want to get it right, and sometimes you want to sort of say the thing and not say the other thing. But this idea that you're doing it wrong, or you're not the pure type of thing that used to be, I really don't agree with some of the things that I hear some people sometimes say. And I think for whatever reason, it's designed to keep us from talking. Because if we don't talk, then we just go full colonized, it's game over type of thing. But then if we move beyond that, it's just sort of like, we'll just try and figure out what we're trying to say. And sometimes it helps to have some visuals, to have, and to put the words up so that we can see them as we share them with each other. Because sometimes we're just learning. So we're kind of smashing things together the best we can. But then we'll make sense of it. It's all good.
I can relate to what you said, Kook, about getting stuck, because when Keixwnéi was talking, actually what I felt goosebumps. And so when Keixwnéi asked us to respond, I kept having this block, like, I don't know how to say goosebumps. I don't know how to say goosebumps. But it's kind of like when you're driving down the road and there's a block, you go around it. So to me, okay, what do I know how to say? I know that I feel really good hearing her voice, and I can say that. So like, go with what you know, and maybe stay on that path as long as you can.
It's good advice. What I was gonna say earlier is, you know, Tutlian Wuhan iti actually Tutlian iti nach Wuhansati. Rarely Tutlian Khatin where Tlingit ani Chani, I don't know if that's actual word, anywhere. And let's see, what's the word? Yach, it's the color, but yachati ayachat most of the time, because it's like a ookéet'ch
Okay.
Kakoshif. Right at me. If I don't behave in that way myself, like toughen up like a rock. And Tutlian, even if we may all need that, it's really hard these days to be able to be the only one sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like once you start going around saying this stuff, the universe is gonna like say, prove it. And they're gonna like throw something right at you, and so it's really interesting to sort of to think about that stuff. Um, I don't know what to call. I've never heard anything for goosebumps. I don't know if any of you folks have heard anything. They do call it chicken skin in Hawaii, so we could say "Ka'atuku yachaya achtuku,"
Hey,
at least for now, until we figure out how to say.
What about the word rarely?
Rarely, like give me a context.
I rarely see blankety blank. Like I rarely see this.
Huh? That's a good question. I don't know.
Juno, Keixwnéi, usually we see stellar jays that are blue. Clark, tlél jeex. Folks have been seeing a leucastic, it means a white jay. So a blue jay that doesn't have blue on him. So that's the sentence I want to say that uses rarely.
Juan Ganin says sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I'll have to.
What do you say when? Yeah.
There's that good list.
I literally was. I got the dog barking over here. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I suppose you could say something like "Wan qanin sawe kashkhasatin ha'anikach." Sometimes I don't see it, and so there's some concepts that just might not fully exist. Like I don't. Yeah, I don't really hear people say, they'll just say something like, I don't hear that anymore, or I don't see them, or it's been a long time. So you could say, "Ah, for a long time, I didn't hear that." If someone said something that you hadn't heard in a long time, or finally, I see you. Because maybe like I haven't seen you in years or something like that. And then they'll say something like, I didn't recognize you. So there's a number of different ways that people do, but like when we start getting into, and I'll see, I can ask, because we're starting to do some work with Keixwnéi. And then if you folks do any work with speakers, maybe you can ask them how they would say like, it's rarely seen. Because the other one is using like a fourth person. So like some of our friends in the interior could probably say, so the blue jay is not seen on our land, but now people are it's starting to be seen. And so there are these like, it doesn't happen. And those are usually going to be a negative form of the verb with a fourth person. So you could say, or it's not heard. And so that's probably one way those things could happen. But again, it kind of depends on the context, because then there's this other verb form that's a little bit more complicated, which is like, I haven't eaten it yet, or I haven't tried it yet, or it hasn't happened yet. So there's those types of things too. Or you can say like, we used to always see them, but now we don't. Good question. Any other thoughts, questions?
I have a page to show you.
Sheesh.
Um, oh, Chalk kayidat. Te tuch yakyati. Te it yakyati. Yes ye duasak. Dleit ka uduasak. Obsidian. Hinyakwan ka Dleit ka uduasak Sumez near Craig on Prince of Wales. Kat kakya yati we yes. Teki shani. And I need that fourth person, someone. Kakjel. Aneyas yawagu. Not ki dakun. Dek hundet kadek kejin kai. Kua yik yao adenich tikdan shakte dakun hundet kai. Sutka yega. Satguyega dot kunakawu andat kaknu. Yidat akakuashi kakwanuk lita yes. They talk hinyakwan. So this is an example of whoosh de sakan. There you go.
Goodness, sheesh. Whoosh to seichen. Yeah, what?
Whoosh de sakan.
Yeah,
That I think is trade.
yeah, what? Whoosh to seichen. It's trade, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can go whoosh to seich, and then you can have a verb after it as well. So you can say whoosh to seich gachtitakeen. We're gonna trade seats, right? So there's different ways you could, but just whoosh to seich and on its own is talking about trade. Yik for the yik and stuff like that, you want it to come after the noun. So usually yak yik. Or whatever you're going to yik into it, the noun comes right before it.
Okay.
Okay. It's cheesh.
Wanach sewage ka yidat yuduasak I Keixwnéi. Why is it called Cha ka yidat?
Then and now. Thank you. I didn't tell you that. Kanaknuu, we find obsidian knives at Kanoklu from thousands of years ago. So this is because the obsidian comes from a particular volcano, the scientists can identify it. And we know that people brought this obsidian so far north, even, I think it's 8,000 years ago.
Wow.
And thank you for asking, because that's an important part of this paper. You will see this paper again, improved.
When you copy anything from the Edwards dictionary, if you get that Y with the tone mark over it, that's an underlined X. And then I think the N with like a tilde over the top is an underlined K. I can't remember what the underlined G is, but this was before the Crippen keyboard and before the Northwest Coast keyboard. So a font was invented called Taku something. And so you would type in these certain characters, and if you had a different font, it would show up as a different character. But that's
Oh,
taking care of it at that time, back in the early 2000s.
okay. So that's like reading old-fashioned, like Chaucer or German with that funny double S that looks like a giant B.
Yeah, yeah. And so now it's like
Okay.
anach is what that is.
Anak is what that should be. Okay.
Which we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what anach is and where it comes from. So that when you spot it, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's that thing. Like, ookéet'ch.
Ah.
Any other questions, thoughts, things you want to share?
I do. I just had to restart my computer because for some reason my video wasn't popping up. But since I did that, everything that I had pulled up was having to refresh.
Oh,
But I think I can do it now. So if I can share screen.
yeah, you should be able to.
There we go. So what I'm doing, the project that I'm working on is kind of small parts within the project that I started with Miss Lori Hagee at Glacier Valley. And the idea is for each grade level, there's a theme, and then each grade level will have a tribal value that comes from, and then stories and songs that that match with the tribal value. And we're getting the tribal values from the Southeast traditional values. And then it's not just taught in English, but in Tlingit. So we're using the Tlingit language to teach the students. And we're starting with the core values. And that
Keixwnéi, you're freezing a little bit. You might maybe just turn your video
language through our home. Okay. Computer. And to teach of the more like rather than singing language, it's more creating songs to teach language. And, because we're also having to teach remotely, we're having to create a lot of like asynchronous videos so that the students can practice at home. And we're trying to use more hand motions, and we just started incorporating sign language into it. So, and I won't play this whole thing, but it just kind of gives you an idea of what the students get to practice at home. Ends up being, so we're also using images that match the language and pairing it with songs. So it's just kind of just a, oops, oh darn it, no, oops, sorry, I don't know what happened. There we go. If I can move this. So the students get to practice, it's kind of like homework. So they get to show that what they've learned. It's really cool to see the students practicing. I'm not sure, are you guys able to hear it? What's that?
It's really quiet. It's kind
Are
of.
you guys able to hear it?
I can't really hear, but I don't know if you selected that share my computer audio option. That might help.
Audio settings, same as system, speaker, microphone. I don't, normally I see it.
Oh, really? It's there like when you first share your screen.
Okay. I'm clicking on the microphone, but I don't see it as an option.
Oh, like try if you stop the screen share
This,
and then
okay.
once you hit the screen share button again and that window pops up, that's where you should see the share computer sound option.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, now which one was I in?
That,
Flipgrid example.
yeah.
There we go. So the students get to practice, show what they've learned.
Our ancestors, our future, balance, harmony. I'm Podash and Filter, and remember to keep the culture alive. And have a nice day.
So it's really, really cool to see that. And that was like kind of leading up to the project. This thing keeps getting in my way. I want to go to the next tab. I wonder if I can minimize. No. There we go. So what we're working on now is the values for the kindergartners. And so the project that I'm working on, so this is like my little project within the big project, is to turn these values in Tlingit and put it to a song. And it's not always that easy. If I can, oops, where's that? My image. I thought I had a downloaded image. Okay, but it. Oops, not that one. The idea is to teach it with the Tlingit with the English, but the drum beat for the Tlingit has to be the same for the English, because the idea is to remove the English completely. So once they know what the value is, they can sing it without the English translation. And that will be for all of the values by the end of 5th grade. This will be one big long song where the students will have learned the value and how to say it in Tlingit, and then to be able to sing it. So we're only up to, I just did the 1st grade values. And then the idea too is when we have elders come in and tell stories, but as we're teaching the values, like the core values, if I'll tell a story like Raven and Petrel's water, I'll try to slip the values into the story so that the students can understand that our stories are tied to our cultural values as well, and that a lot of our narratives are tied to song as well. And also because it's remote and giving students like inspiration to do activities, we create like little games so the kids can pick a game for the values that they've learned and try to match them. And I won't do this all, but we have the picture that they've learned, like this is the image for ookéet'ch, and then they have to try to find it, the audio for it in Tlingit.
Ha'ani.
So that wasn't it, because that was jeex, but
Ha'shuka.
that was right here. So, oh, no, it was this one. So get the matching audio for the image, then they get a match. But again, I think this is, oops. So the small project that I'm working on right now is just turning the values for the 2nd graders, which is lesson plans for kindergarten, to turn the language into a song that matches the tones. So, and it's been kind of fun because being a drummer, I just like drumming and singing. That's one little project that I was working on. share.
Jeex. Daleadwy Keixwnéi. Ach ookéet'ch. Kai we a datki o has to eat the tool to cut you on. Ye awe chiltsi dain has chiltsi dain ya has a yanas queen ya a datki. Ye awe achtundatani ye yeti. Kayu hansu. Ye tu ye yeti Tlingit. Ye tu ye yeti chitzin. Gulchish. Thanks for sharing. It's a heavy thing to teach it to kids, but I'm so happy because I think kids just absorb stuff really fast. Like one time I was teaching Tlingit, and then I was dealing with these preschoolers came. I was like, oh, here, try and make this sound. This one's gonna be real hard, and they all just made that sound. I was like, or it won't be hard at all. So it was really fun. But yeah, wonderful stuff. Bring any questions that you might have to this group. It's a great place to sort of workshop some stuff. Like the terms for respect are really interesting because there's a noun and a verb, and then the verb gets a little bit complicated sometimes, but it's a good one. It's a really good one. And sheesh, that's awesome. Anybody else? Questions, stuff to share, things to say?
That was great. I really like that, what you're working on.
Jeex.
Chydse jyn cysa i'ch toasgu in Keixwnéi just cwnach is a chanach si Cluck Wednesday cook achina Keixwnéi. Mom, how kusi gawu aya? Just cwnach do to ookéet'ch. Just makes her happy. Cwnach. Gynulleidh.
If you didn't already get a text message, there's we're having Tlingit Gawu offered, I think, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, where students, if they just want to come in and just, if they didn't do their digital badges, because sometimes technology is complicated, that if they just want to just speak the language, or if they just want to share, because a lot of times at the end of the class, we have to cut them off because they just start saying words that they just want to share. So we're setting up times for them to come in and share or earn their digital badges if they haven't already.
Okay. Diakte ka tutadet gai wutu seid ke wutu ishi ani it was a lot of fun. Jeex.
Echa. Yeah, that you took the time. So, yeah, Hawaii. A klein, a chick has outlet, has a couch she. Yeah, has to you a tongue you tin. It's just way nursery rhymes. A dachayat to cut at Hawaii ku Hawaii at she. Yeah, ach tu you kayak too. We Lori aus shaguk. We a de kaudutli she. Ka chwasaku yisaku ayatsu a klein Tlingit she. I'm really happy that we're making our own music. When I look at Hawaii, and the ukulele has just become their thing. I don't know why we didn't take something from the colonizers, like a guitar or something. Can we just make that our thing? But I'm so happy because I love everything that's been done. But I've always sit and think, like, why is it always got to be from a nursery rhyme? You know, and I know because it's kind of the low-hanging fruit and the kids already know the melody, and so that does help. But learning through song, I think, is really important. And I really loved what I saw in Hawaii, how they started that way too, but then they just started making their own songs. And so it's really encouraging to see all you folks and the work that you're doing, but especially making new songs that are specifically for teaching and learning the language is really amazing. Jeex. Okay, Anybody else? I know we had a question about the wind. So let's, I was looking for goosebumps. I didn't find anything. So, but I'll show you where I go if I'm trying to do like a deep dive for a particular noun. So there's this spreadsheet that we made from Jeff Lear's list of nouns. And so what I would do is open the find window, which I'm not sure, probably, I don't know if you could see the find window on there, but if you put like Control F, or if you're on a Mac, Command F, and then I would just type wind, and we'll see what comes up. So here's, we get ripples. So we can go back and look at this. So here's the noun itself. So keixwnéi. And then we get over here, and here's, basically we call this like a translation equivalent. Like, so this is like in one word, what is this type of thing? So like it might say nose, but it's actually nostril. So then this one right here is what we call the definition. So this is where it's getting into the finer sort of point. So this is drifting snow. So this comes from a verb. We just heard Keixwnéi at the beginning of class say hajinak dak is. It's the same verb root. Is is to be blown by the wind. That's where the word isa comes from for cloth, because that was sails were the first time Tlingits saw cloth probably. But we're not looking for wind ripples. So here's Chinook wind, ilja, or a south wind. So there's one word for wind. And so then you got to sort of go through, and sometimes you get like, there's 3 different sort of definitions for it. So it does repeat. And then we have that's winding. Nope, that's not what we're looking for. That's a cool thing. Windpipe, that's also not what we're looking for. And so these are going to be some windpipe examples. So I'm going to click underneath it so we can skip those. Wind blowing from the west. So there's a west wind. And if you scroll over, you might sometimes have some notes here. So it also, you can see the speaker. So NS is nation story. C Joseph is Charlie Joseph. So we've got that one. It's the same one. So we'll go see what this one is. Breeze, neek. That's interesting. Nuke is probably another way to say that. There it is. So neek, there's a verb root neek, which is sickness or hurt or pain. But then there's nuke, which at its core means to feel something. But if you're from cake, you will say that verb as neek, and a few other places. But that's different than the sickness one. Ookéet'ch, there's just a generic word for the wind. It means the one that blows. So ookéet'ch, Saanach, wind blowing from the south. Saanach'eet is another term. Let's see if there's any notes. So here's some. Saanach waduanuk. So waduanuk means the wind is blowing, which is just kind of an interesting thing. Again, Charlie Joseph is the consultant, is the speaker here.
Waduanuk, is that referring to as a plural?
Waduanuk literally means like it is felt, like somebody feels it. But that's how you usually say the wind is blowing. So I'm going to click underneath this so we can go to the next one. Oh, tukseit, or there's a wind instrument. It's not what we're looking for. That's pretty cool. Tuukseyeet is how I've heard this one. Trumpet, bugle, saxophone. Oh, taku wind. There you go. That was the original question. And so Then we'll go over here, see if there's anything. Nope, no notes. So there it is. Let's see what else we have. So taku is the way you say taku. And when we get into place names, one of the things that you're going to find is very similar to names of people is you might get 4 or 5 different definitions of what that word means. And as you go through your lifetime, you might believe one thing, and then you'll hear something, you're like, oh, maybe I believe that now. And it affects me because I'm from Skagway. And if you go to Skagway, let's say home of the north wind, windy valley, windy place, windy, all these other things. But then as I looked, I was like, how does it work though? Because I know in Tlingit, you'd say Skagway. How on earth could that be windy place? So then I found like bunched up water. I was like, okay, well, it means bunched up water. And people will ask me, oh, what's this mean? I was like, it means bunched up water. Because I don't want you to say home of the wind or north wind or windy valley. Stop it. But then someone told me it's a white cap on the water. But then I couldn't find how that worked either. But then I went with white caps on the water for a long. Then I went with roughed up water because that's what Emmons had in his notes, and that was about. I ran with that for about 10 years. But then Chachi Will Geiger found a recording with Mildred Sparks who said it's wushakakuye. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense how you can get shakakwe out of wushakakuye. That makes sense as far as how the language works. And that means it's a place with a hard core in the trees. And I like that because now you say it's a hardcore place. Now the name of Skagway just got way cooler than it ever was. That's what I go with now. The reason I bring this up is because some people will tell you ta'ku comes from ta'wak qatliqu, the flooding geese. Other people will tell you it's from ta and q, which gets you ta'ku, King Salmon Cove. As far as how the language works, King Salmon Cove does make more sense to me. However, Nora is the one who said it was flooding geese, so I'm never going to say she was wrong. But I think it's less, I don't know if it's a right or wrong type of thing. And there are certain place names where the interpretation is going to get a little bit more. You're going to have these camps and they're going to be like super hardcore about it. They'll be like, no, it means this. And the other groups will be like, no, it means that. And one of my uncles used to say Skagway was like the sound of somebody peeing on a rock. I was like, what are you talking about? So good luck with all of it. Ta'ku is how you say it. How you interpret it is up to you. I lean towards King Salmon Cove just because I can see the pieces there. If you put k on it, it becomes a compound. That vowel goes long and low. That just makes sense to me. Let's find a couple more wind examples and we'll take our break. Window, that's not what we're looking for. Windfall, no. Window, no. North wind, Hun. It's where Hunia comes from, Huna. North wind bird, okay. Okay. Wind that calms the ocean, causing the breakers to subside, jeet. Okay. Ichanugu. Same thing. Onshore west wind, yende'at. Can you see the parts in there? There's 3 things. What are the 3 things in that word?
Yende'at.
Yep. What's yan?
Shore. To coming
Yeah.
shore.
To the shore from the ocean. What's day?
From.
Toward.
Toward. And what's ut?
I think.
The thing.
A thing, something, right? So this shoreward thing. There you go. Sometimes it's really straightforward. Sometimes it's really complicated. What is this? Oh. He hollers for the wind. Oh, it's a name for the jeex. It's a loon.
He hollers.
Whirlwind. Keixwnéi. That one was fun because we saw, we did this one in advanced Tlingit this semester because in the Haynes Junction in the fall, somebody had a fruit stand and this tiny tornado came and just threw the fruit all over the place and just like trashed that little fruit stand. And so we took a look at this word and we pulled it apart a little bit. It was ravens. Something I'll have to, who I think is the verb root. Anyways, we'll pull that apart maybe some other day.
I wonder if they have that explanation with the gugwatéeyi.
Oh, like what?
Like when we were referring to somebody who's not telling the truth, someone who's a gugwatéeyi.
Yeah. So, well, there's jeex as a verb root, which maybe we'll get out
Yes.
of. Let's get out of the noun territory and let's get into the verb territory for a second. Then we'll take our break. So looking at the verb dictionary, we can untangle, or we can just spend some time with jeex. Can't understand, but we can take a look. So there's a few nouns that are also verb roots. Jeex is one, sa is another, hoots is another one. And then there's some body part ones, right? So sha and aukéet'ch. But in this case, jeex is raven. And so that could be just the bird that's flying around, or it could be capital R, built the world, did all the things, raven. But if you look at it as a verb root, so jeex, to pretend or to make believe. And then let's just take a look so we can take a bit of a deeper dive on this. So we're going to go to P, scroll down. Here's preach, here's pretend. He pretended he was working and that he knew his job. He's pretending all the time to be something he isn't. So this verb generally has two interpretations, I think. One is to pretend to be something you're not, or to act like you know what you're doing, but you really don't. And it's kind of like you are like, and then the L classifier is kind of an interesting thing as well. Like you're either being raven or you're taking on some sort of raven quality. And it says something about raven, like, you know, like, let me act like I know what I'm doing, but I don't really know what I'm doing. That's kind of at the core of it. So then we go back to jeex again. And then we get jeex. So this is to cheat, like at cards, or to deceive someone, to fool them. So I could say, jeex. I fooled you. I tricked you. And then if we put in front of it, which is a mouth, we have to lie, like to be a liar. And this is where jeex comes in, to be a liar. Then we get jeex, which is really interesting. It's another way to talk about lying, to deceive someone, or to give them the wrong information intentionally, right? Like, for example, back to Skagway, these tourists were walking around, they're like, someone said there's a waterfall right over here. And I was like, Yeah, that's about 3 miles that way. So I don't know if anybody told you that, because they were pretty elderly kind of people. I don't know if they thought that they were going. I think they were just walking around the corner is what they thought. But back to the nouns, when you have jeex in front of something else, that's a different thing, because now it's associated with capital R, raven. And what George Davis told me, he said, when something strange happens at a place, they name that place after raven. So you go to all these different places, jeex something. That means something important happened there, something strange happened there. And then when there's different names for things, jeex dadzi is a gugwatéeyi name. It means raven's pyrite. It could have another interpretation. But I've already been censored by YouTube, so I'm not going to give you that, and you'll have to just go look it up on your own. But
what was that one again?
dadzi. Well, I'll just.
That's what my dad would name his friends that.
Oh, really?
And one time the pizza man came and he's like, "Tell your dad jeex dadzi was here," and I was like, "What's that?" And I was like, okay. And my dad's like, "Who's that?" "Oh yeah, that guy." I was like, "You didn't tell me it was a joke for like 20 years.
Dadzi has 3 interpretations. Pyrite, which is fool's gold. Firestones, which I'm not sure exactly what that is. And then a pair of things that a guy has. How's that? Okay.
That was what we thought it was.
On that note, maybe we'll take our break. So it just got awkward. Take 5, come back, and then we're gonna take a look at some of these. We're gonna go back to the suffix sort of idea and some of these bases. And I'm gonna show you what happens when you put suffixes onto certain words. And especially like there's some really common ones that you're gonna find all over the place. Like we just saw anach, and so I'll show you how those ones work. Sheesh. Take 5. All right. Untitled Chapter. So any other thoughts or questions before we transition to our lesson tonight? Okay. Okay. So I put this together, I think, when I was teaching in Carcross. So I found a picture of teaching Carcross several years ago. This was with Keixwnéi. We did, I can't remember, 5 days or something, 10 days. So kind of trying to do these summer kind of intensive learning sessions where we go for 5 or 6 hours a day. We'll go for 5 days, take 2 days off, go for 5 more, take 2 days off, go for 5 more. And they were really fun. And we were getting lots of people who were showing up and wanting to learn Tlingit. This little baby's pretty big now, so it's kind of fun. So just continuing to think about location and direction and time, which are very similar concepts in Tlingit. We're going to look at some examples of how these things fit together. So one is like coming back to these suffixes. So these attach directly to a word, right at the end of a word, and they have specific meaning. So what we have is we have dach, which is from or out of or since. And that, if it attaches to a vowel, can sometimes just be right? And so we'll see examples of how that kind of works. And then sometimes it could just be X, but that's usually only an ach, which means from it and often off of it, and kach, which is from the top of it or off of the top of it. So contraction is something that happens in Tlingit. So like some people will say cannot, some people will say can't, do not, don't. So in those examples, it's optional. So this is something where you have optional contraction. Like it might just shrink down to this smaller sound. There's going to be other cases where that contraction has to happen, and that's usually in a verb. And so we'll look at those things later. But for now, dach is going to be, that's your starting point. But then when you start to see this TX or sometimes just an X, you'll learn how to recognize those as well, both when you read them and when you hear them. Dach is always high. It's always short and high. Okay, just keep that in mind. And the X is always underlined. Day, to, toward, until, in the manner of, don't worry about that one yet. But basically to or toward. Toward is probably the way I like to think about this one. The tone of this one is opposite of what's before it. So you go hit, day, nesh, day. And this one can be long or short. So you'll hear some people might say hit day. And some people might say hit day, where it's just longer. It kind of doesn't matter, but we tend to write it short. But that's not a right or wrong thing. That's just sort of a tendency type of thing. Nach is through or along, including the time of. Through or along are your two options for this one. So going along the top of a mountain or going through a hole or whatever, those are going to be nach. T, this is kind of, there's two different ones, it seems. Most commonly, it's at, but it's like arriving at. So like if I say a cut yan uate, it's like they put it down, like maybe on a table or something. So it means at, but it's usually like arriving at. There's another one which could means like going around, like atwugut, walked around. W or is also at, but this one is used without a verb. There's almost never a verb that's there. So this is just like, it's there, it's not, you know, it's at home, it's at school, right? And we'll look at some examples of these, because when we look at a list, it's very abstract, but the list is there to sort of help us remember what they are. Jeex is a white raven, is that correct? That's a rarely used, I think it's two nouns, but I don't know, because there's also kitwu, and kitwu is a white killer whale. So I think it's a noun because it makes the keet go short. And suffixes, these suffixes generally don't change the word they get added to. But if you put two nouns together, then they start to change each other. Good question. This, or sometimes there's nothing, means to be at there, but it's usually at rest or just residing there. This one is also a time marker. So if you say jeex, that could be 2 days, but it could be Tuesday. But if you say jeex, that's at Tuesday. Now it has to be a time marker. So they'll say ta in the winter. That's how you mark time, is with this one. And then the that's repeatedly at, moving around at, sometimes like some kind of habitual thing, like it just keeps happening. So these are your first set of suffixes to sort of think about. You can see them all over the place. You can start getting really good at spotting them, and then you're going to get really good at using them. Questions? Okay. So let's take a look at what happens when we start putting these things onto other words. So we'll start with this one. Ya. It's the right here one. Ya, he, we, you. Continuing to come back to these. Ya is right here. In some cases, it could mean this, like yaguka, this cup right here, right? This is relative to the speaker. So my ya is right around me. So you could say yadach or yatch, from right here. So for example, I could say yadachwugut. They were right here, and now they've left from right here. Yade, it's coming right towards this area. Yanach, it's gonna come right through here, like a bird. Yat, arriving or located right here. Yadu, it is here. Yach, it's at rest or residing right here. Yach, it's moving along here, or it's repeatedly here. But look at what happens to this vowel. It's long and high in every one of these examples. This is something that happens with this ya. It's got a slightly different set of rules than some of the other things, but it's good to note. And you're not going to hear these ones. You'll hear yadu quite a bit, and maybe ya. The other ones, I don't think you hear that often, but you might. So then, he, a very similar pattern emerges. It goes long and high. Hey, dach. Again, you don't hear that too much, but you could say it. Hey day. You hear that one quite a bit. So hey day shukach tuton. It's built into there to open containers and stuff. Hey nach. You'll hear that one a little bit. hate, hey-do, hey, heex. Not as common, you know, heyday is probably the most common one of this group. We, weidach, weidch. For context, you could say, weidach yanakut hade. They are walking from over there, heading this way. Weide, towards there. This one I would use. I might say, weide nate, bring it over there. Weinach, wait, weidu. Weidu is used quite a bit, I think. Weich, weich. Not a whole lot. Maybe weide and weidu are the most common ones here. Yu, same pattern. They all go long and high. Yudach, yutch, yude, yunach, yut, yudu, yuch, yuch. So again, yude and yudu are probably ones you'll hear more than the other ones, although maybe yudach, it's coming from way over there. So another place you're gonna see these is in the gu-sa construction. So we talked about this before when we're sort of looking at how to ask questions. This one tends to want to have a suffix associated with it. Gudachsa, from where? Gudesa, towards where? Gunachsa, through or along where? Gutsa, where is it located at? Right? Gusu, where is it? Guchsa, where is it resting or residing? Guchsa, where is it sort of moving or repeatedly going to? So when you hear this, what you listen for is the suffix, and then you'll match it, right? Gudachsa, where is this canoe from? And then you could say, Chunadach, right? Or whatever, wherever it's from. Yeah, so this one, there's a different guch, which is a slave, yeah. So this one is just guchsa, it's this gu plus the suffix. But yeah, and so we'll run into lots of things where this word sounds the same, but it's actually a different word. Okay. Here's some examples. This is a traditional kind of a greeting, even if they know who you are, even if they know where it's from. This is something like, I've seen this in action where like the Keixwnéi, the leaders would be up on this hill and they would send a messenger down to the shore to say like, where is this canoe from? And so they'll shout it from the beach, then they would, the canoe would shout back, and then they would sort of say like, why are you coming here? And then they'll say why they're in, even if everybody knows it's a ceremonial greeting, like a script almost. So here you have our canoe is from Huna. Where are you going? Where are you walking towards? So the response, it puts day because it's a day question. And so it puts a day onto this noun. And then yanigut, you are walking. Yanchagut, I am walking. So this is the sort of the question and response drill. So if they said gudachsach yanigut, where are you coming from? And then here I might say, Dana dakahiti dachyan chakut. I'm coming from the bank, right? Gunachsa akawaku. So there's the nach. Wait, ya nach akawaku. Where did they nail it through? They nailed it through that wall. Here's some more. Gutsa uwakuch. Where did they go? Neilt uwakuch. They went home. So that's that T right there. You could have said gutesa wukuch, neilte wukuch. But that T just gives a little bit different, slightly different interpretation. Gusu achkisi. Yadu achkisi. Or yadu ikisi, sorry. So ach te I. Gusu. Yadu. Guksayeyati ish. Where does your father live? Deshukeyati ach ish. So again, this gets matched. And now this can change to any place in the world. Yeyati blank. So if they said itla, achtla. Guksayeyati ookéet'ch. Where's your dog at? Heshputusku. Nobody knows. Guksa shkanaltech. Where are they biking along? Yuch shkanaltech. They're biking along way over there. Questions? We okay? So now let's attach these to a relational base. So this means it's a word that needs to belong to another noun, and then it can also take a suffix. So here you can say achji, idji, duji, hastuji, haji, yiji, kaji, aji, any of those. Achji, my possession. Haji, our possession. Idji, your possession. Yiji, y'all's possession. Duji, their, singular their, possession. Hastuji, plural their, possession. Kaji, people's possession. Aji, it's something's possession, or I guess its possession, a non-human third person. Okay. So these, it needs to have a noun before it, but we're not going to say that noun. So, jeedach, jeet. This one can be talking about a number of different things. Who's giving this thing, right? So if you were nice and you gave me something, like let's say you had some yummy dry fish or some naidi, and you said, jeex, this is for you. And then you could say, ach ish jeedach, and you didn't have any verbs in there. Jeex, ach ish jeedach. This is for you from my father. There's also a kind of a cool construction where you could say, ach Keixwnéi jeedach gugwatéeyi. I am tired from working. Jeedach, and so it's like the tiredness is given from something. So sometimes it's a metaphor, but that's the jeedach one, or jeet. Okay. Jeeday, jeenach, jeet. Jeet is used for a ton of giving verbs. Gonna cheesh, ach jeet yiti wegao. Thank you for giving me the time. Ach jeet te, we te. Give me that rock. Ach jeet se'in wehin. Give me some water. Right, so this jeet is going to be there at arriving at the possession. jiwu. We should have learned that one in beginning Tlingit. Dasa e jiwu. What is in your possession? Dana ach jiwu. I got money, right? That's jiwu. Jeex, at the possession. Jeex, repeatedly in possession of. Questions?
I had once said jeex. I think I put it in a meme, but somebody said that that wasn't proper. Is that correct? Like, you got this, jeex.
Ijiyisaya is like, this is for you.
Oh, okay.
That's how I think of it.
Or,
yeah, but
okay.
it's so like, in English, like, you got this, I guess you could say, ijiwa, it's in your possession. But it's sort of a different concept, I think, in English. We're like, we're saying you're gonna succeed, or you're gonna be fine. So it might be one where we got to sort of think about the meaning, and say or something, right? And so, but yeah, because I know that that's a phrase in English, but I'm not sure that phrase is going to transfer over that well, because some people might take it too literally.
Someone had said, I think someone had said, ookéet'ch, I have it in me, or ookéet'ch, it is in you. Kind of like, you got this, is what I was told, but I wanted to make sure that wasn't completely wrong. I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different ways. Like, you could say gugwatéeyi, which is like, you're not going to fall apart, which would be kind of another fun way to sort of look at it. But I guess it kind of depends on what you're conveying. Like in English, when you're saying you got this, you're saying like you're gonna succeed, right? You're gonna do the thing. It's a phrase of encouragement. And so ookéet'ch, it's inside you. I think that works for like, if someone's struggling with the language or they're nervous about it, you could say ookéet'ch. You can also say gugwatéeyi. You're going to be fine. Jeex, you're going to succeed. Gugwatéeyi, you're not going to fail. So I guess I kind of like those ones because they tend to be more specific, because there's certain things like, the other thing to remember with jiwu is this doesn't work like English with like get, because get does like a million things. Like, oh, I get it, right? I'm gonna get going, or have, right? Like this one, I don't think it works very well for like, I have 2 sisters, right? So for those in Tlingit, I would just say, that's all you need to do. 2 people, my sisters. That's all you got to do.
What about shot jiwu? Shot jiwu.
I would say that's what I would say, or else it sounds like you kind of keep them under your thumb or something, or you're just holding them all the time. I don't know, but that's how I think about it. Just because, and I know people use jiwu all the time for all kinds of stuff, and sometimes it works, but like same with like concepts and stuff, like and so for kinship, I just like to say they are 2 people. So you got 2 wives.
How do you say the first one? Like if you have 2 daughters?
So when you're counting things, you put nach after it. And now we know you're counting people. And then you'd say a plural form of the kinship term. So I would say, dach nach awe ach sik has.
Dachnach owe ach sick has.
Mm-hmm.
Jeex.
Yeah, well. But jiwu does work for like you own it. Like yak ach jiwu, I have a boat. Right? So it doesn't mean it's in your hand. It's in your possession. That's what ji, this one is possession. Any other questions? Okay, so we're gonna take a look at some of these ones. So is it's, right? So you say aka, on it. Ada, about it. Atayi, beneath it. Tlingit uses this one lots. Once we name the thing, if it's not a human thing, it'll switch to all the time. Like in that Taka story, he says what, like this migrating to the coast. So you'll see this one just used all the time. Once we've referred to the thing, then we switch to okay. There's another one which is which you'll see a little bit in other places, right? We're not gonna look at too many examples of that one, but like ookéet'ch, it was born there. But a similar thing, like once we've named the place, ookéet'ch, right? So it was born there or whatever. Then we're gonna look at these three because these ones are very common in the Tlingit language. A ka, a ya, a tu. This is on it or a horizontal surface, the face of it or a vertical surface, and inside of something, okay? So we're gonna see how these ones work when you put the suffixes on them, because you'll see them all around, right? So here's just some examples. Adayu tuchwatan. I thought about it. So this could change to other things. Idayu tuchwatan. I thought about you, right? Ayayati. They or it is there. Akat is say wakak. You forgot it. So this can change. Akat is say wakak. You forgot about me. Ikat khat say wakak. I forgot about you, right? But this one is so this is just like I forgot it. Akat khat say wakak. You're saying it's on my forgetting, basically. Akudzati. They were born there. Yiyet achleqen. I am looking at your faces. So there's the ya is right on there. And then there's a T right on there. Yet. Shtuk anidihin. Believe in yourself. Have confidence in yourself. Shtu is inside of the self. Okay. So coming back, dach, de, nach, t, wo. We're gonna see what happens when we put these on these different words. Here's 3 extra suffixes for you, just because a table full of them is not enough. There's the ch, that will mark one of 2 things if it's on a noun. It'll mark who is doing the noun, or it'll mark what they're doing the noun with. So I could say, it was the cannibal that clubbed the person. But I could say, ookéet'ch, jeex, hit them on the head with a pencil, right? So the pencil didn't hit anybody in the head. It was an instrument. So that's what we call this. So it's got a fancy name, an ergative marker, or an instrument marker. So it's either someone who's doing it, or that's the thing that somebody's doing it with. And you'll be able to tell which one it is. Is usually going after, but this is also waiting for. We were just looking at this with this really nice piece of language that somebody shared with me from an elder of what people would say to grandkids when they were born. They'd say, wait for me. Such a beautiful thing. And that's this one right here. So basically you'd say something, yeex, and then some verb, which is usually like to be somewhere or to sit somewhere. So I might say to my dog, yeex, sit here and wait for me. Right? But this is also used to like to go after something. Like I could say, I'm gonna go get some coffee. The N is with, but it's usually, you'll see it as een. You usually see it as een. Okay. So now let's take a look at a whole bunch of these things. So this one, oh, it's actually, it's usually 2 A's. Okay. Or no, that's one, sorry. So on its own, it's right? It, some third person, non-human thing. And I'll let you folks decide whether this one is a dog or a cat. If you want to say duh with your dog or cat, that's fine. But a lot of times with animals, you should be saying So a sha, it's head, as opposed to do sha. But you know, it's kind of up to you what you figure is a duh and what's an So ookéet'ch is either because of it or with it. That one kind of depends. If you're hearing like ookéet'ch, that's usually saying because of that. ookéet'ch, because of this. But it kind of comes from this right here. Following it or going after it. This one's used a lot in oratory. Which is usually translated as and then. Dach or from it or after it, after that time. Dach was usually saying like following that. So usually if you're telling stories, is more like sometime later. Dach is a little bit more like since this thing happened, now this other thing is going to happen. Day, towards it. And this one has some special uses in Tlingit, which we'll see in some of the verb forms later. On. It's easy to mistake this one for land, but if they sort of talk about something, like they'll say, they made a club at that time. On and with it, they clubbed up somebody in the head. So this is usually like with something. Anach is this is the one that we saw earlier, a long time ago, 2 hours ago or something, with to go along something, right? And so we're gonna see this one now in place names. It comes up, something like that. At, arriving at, sometimes going around at a place. Abu, to be located there. Akh, or also to be residing or at rest there. Ach, keeps coming back or it's moving around there. So I know when we do these tables and stuff, it's kind of abstract, kind of difficult. So what we'll do on Thursday is let's start by just talking about the weather, clothing, activities you might do outside. So if you want to try and put together a few sentences, maybe, if you want to use pictures, maybe, if you want to share the things that you're writing with us, that's really helpful. So we'll start class with that. It's like weather, activities, clothing, and then we're going to go into, we probably won't move back into this whole slideshow, but I'll put the whole thing up so you can download it and see what's to come. There's, I don't know, we're halfway done. But instead, we might do 4 or 5 more. I just want to do the, so you'll see like ka and ya and tu. So maybe we'll just do those 3 so that you'll see like tunach, toot, tuch, because those ones you will see around. Yanach, yet, yabu, ka de, ka nach. These ones you'll see around. So we'll do these 3, then we'll move back into the mosquito story and start pushing. Just keep going through that and reading it, looking at things, seeing what you recognize. So that's our plan for this, for Thursday. Okay.
Oh, I get confused between jeet, in, ich. Are those related to these endings?
Yes. So we'll, let's see, where is that part? I think it's further down, maybe. Yeah. So there's this thing called an empty base, which is E. The only reason it exists is so you could put a suffix onto a pronoun, because you can't put one, you can't say achde. You cannot say that, and you cannot say achtla de, and you cannot say chone de. You cannot say those things. So then you put E in front of it, just so you can put a suffix on there. So then those same things, ach I de, towards me. But this is going to pop up in a bunch of, if any of those verbs that have ach it, ach in, any of those types of verbs, in the future, it'll be I de. So I'll say, I de kakwanik, I'm going to tell you. I de kakwadeshi, I'm going to help you. But those ones should be day in the future. Eat, it arrived at me. Gonna cheese, eat, huh?
I was just gonna say in kananik.
Right? So eat is to arrive at. Eat yan uwaha. Hunger arrived. Eat yatawaha. Sleep has arrived to me, right? Ich is repeatedly, so you could say ich deshi oeh. That's the one who helps me. So this one is going to be usually in repetitive forms. And then in is with. Ach in kananik.
Goodness, sheesh.
Oh. And there's Hausaneh Chayuchatangi. There's a whole chapter on like direction and location. It's got all these in there. It also explains how they work. We'll go over these ones also on Thursday again, because once we hit the 2-hour mark, like I could just keep telling you stuff, but I think we're all going to get faded and just forget everything. But this is how these work, right? And so there are a bunch of verbs, which is just really like, I think it's interesting to think about the meaning. Like, why do things have this eat and this in front of them? Because it has to do with something like that verb is going to travel on over towards someone. And so it's a little bit indirect in terms of how it works. Right, and we'll look at some. We'll just keep looking for examples. You'll see it. You'll see it all over now. Once you see the pattern, like this is the kind of abstract part, but then we move into kind of analyzing a story, and then we see it in use, and that helps sometimes to solidify these things. Okay. Anything else?
Question in the chat.
Oh, jeex. Yeah, it should be dasaya if it's so like ookéet'ch is kind of a fun one, like what do we hear? Ookéet'ch is like what does it sound like? But yeah, usually a dusa is a person, and then dasa is like what is it type of a thing. So yeah, that's a good question.
Sheesh. So even so, like when we have little stuffed animals, when we're doing lessons and they have their friends, like ookéet'ch, hoots, you know, and we're being really gentle and teaching them that, we should still say dasaya or.
If they're like little puppets or something that's getting probably into the adusa, and if it's your dog or your parakeet or whatever, and if you want it to be a duh, I ain't gonna tell anybody not to. Same with animals. Like when you really look at this stuff, you'll see people using duh all the time when they're talking about like just a squirrel or something. But it's kind of personifying that animal a little bit, which does happen. Like it happens in Tlingit. So just keep an eye on it when you're sort of reading stories and speeches, and just start analyzing like which one they're picking, and that might help to see it. So if they're little characters, then duh is just fine. Okay. Okay, jeex, Johan.
Jeex.
Okay.
Jeex.
Jeex.